At 52, Miriam Cole had $214 in her checking account, a car that burned oil on cold mornings, and a brass compass in her coat pocket that hadn't pointed true north in 33 years. She'd been a fifth-grade reading teacher for 19 years. The district eliminated her position in March, budget restructuring, they called it, which was the clean word for deciding that a teacher, with no tenure, no union backing, and no family left to fight for her wasn't worth the paperwork. Her husband had died 14 months before that. There was no one to call. There was nothing left to stay for. She found the auction listing on a county website at 2 in the morning, sitting at a kitchen table that was still set for 2 out of habit. Cole & Sons Boat Works. Flood damage. Half acre on Teal Creek Road, Coastal Carolina. Starting bid, $200. Her name was Cole. She told herself it was a coincidence. She drove 6 hours anyway. The building at the end of a dirt road smelled of salt water, rotting timber, and machine oil gone cold. The roof had caved on the eastern side. Weeds had come up through the floorboards. A painted sign above the door had been weathered down to almost nothing, but almost wasn't nothing. Cole & Sons Boat Works. She stood in the doorway, with November light at her back and the compass in her palm, and felt the needle pull, faintly, towards something inside. It had never done that before. She stood there long enough for the cold to move through her jacket. The interior of the boatyard was one long room, maybe 60 feet deep, with a concrete floor cracked down the middle, where tree roots had worked their way in from the east wall. 3 wooden cradles still sat along the far side, the kind built to hold a hull during construction, shaped like open hands. One had collapsed. The other 2 held nothing, just air and the particular stillness of a space that had been waiting a long time. The roof had caved on the eastern corner. Whatever storms had done the damage, they'd done it more than once. The exposed beams were stained in layers, dark over darker. A workbench ran the length of the south wall, its surface warped, but intact, with rusted iron clamps still bolted along the edge at regular intervals. Whoever had left them there hadn't planned to leave them long. Miriam stepped inside. The floor was wet near the breach in the roof, and her boot found a soft spot in the wood and sank half an inch before she shifted her weight. She stood still and let her eyes adjust. The smell was strong, salt and timber, and something metallic underneath, not rust exactly, more like the ghost of machine oil that had soaked into the concrete over years and never fully left. She recognized it in the way you recognize a smell from childhood, not with your mind first. She didn't know why. She had never been here. She closed her fingers around the compass. The needle had gone still again, back to its usual position, slightly west, pointing at nothing. She put it in her pocket. She'd had it since she was 7. Vivian had kept it in a ceramic dish on the kitchen windowsill, next to a broken watch and a button that had no code. Miriam had asked about it once, turning it over in her hands, while Vivian ironed, the steam iron hissing in the quiet apartment. "It doesn't work," Miriam said. "No," Vivian said. "Then why do you keep it?" Vivian set the iron down and took the compass back, not roughly, just with the care of someone reclaiming something that mattered without explaining why. She looked at it for a moment. Then she put it back in the dish. "Some things you carry," she said, "even when they can't tell you where you're going." She picked up the iron and went back to work. That was Vivian. 12 words when 2 would do, and no more than 12. She raised Miriam from the age of 7, without ever using the word raise. She simply kept showing up, kept the refrigerator stocked, kept the heat on, showed up to every school conference in the same gray coat, the one with the missing button from the dish. She died on a Wednesday in October, when Miriam was 19, a stroke, fast, which was the only easy thing about it. She left no will. She left the compass, the broken watch, and a ceramic dish that Miriam still had in a moving box in the back of her car. No explanation for any of it. That was also Vivian. Miriam was still standing in the center of the boatyard, thinking about none of this consciously, when she heard tires on the gravel outside. The man who stepped out of the truck was around 60, in a canvas jacket, with a county development committee pin on the lapel, the kind of pin that meant something in a town this small. He had the unhurried walk of someone who owned the ground he moved across, or believed he did. He stopped at the door and looked at her, then at the building, then back at her, taking in what he needed to know. Heard someone bought the Cole property at auction. His voice was even, conversational. Didn't think it'd be someone from out of county. Miriam Cole, she said. Something moved across his face. Not surprise, more like recalibration. He let a beat pass. Harlan Pace. I chair the County Marina Development Committee. He looked past her at the broken roof, the cradles, the cracked floor, the way a man looks at something he's already decided the value of. This building's been a liability since the flood of 2018. You're going to want to understand what you've actually bought before you make any plans. I just got here, Miriam said. I know. He pulled a card from his jacket and held it out. This part of Teal Creek is zoned for mixed commercial. There are plans already in progress. It'd be worth your time to come by the office before you put any money into this. He paused. These old structures, they look like something. But the history here is complicated. It's not always what it looks like from the outside. Miriam took the card. He nodded once, got back in his truck, and drove out the way he came. She stood in the doorway listening to the engine fade. The salt wind moved through the gap in the roof and lifted a curl of old paper from the workbench. A scrap, pale brown, weightless, and set it down again. Complicated, he'd said. She looked at the sign above the door. Cole & Sons. The letters were thick, with old paint, each layer a different year. She wondered how many times someone had painted over them, and how many times the name had come back through anyway. She slept the first 2 nights in her car. The back seat was narrow, and her hip found the door handle every time she turned, but she'd slept in worse, and the alternative was driving back to an apartment she'd already surrendered. She used the restroom at a gas station on Route 17, filled a thermos with coffee, and was back at Teal Creek Road before 7 each morning, with a pry bar she'd bought at the hardware store in town. The work was straightforward. Move what could be moved, assess what couldn't. She dragged waterlogged lumber to the fence line and stacked it in rows. She pulled weeds from the floor cracks by the root, working down the length of the room methodically, the way she'd taught her students to read. Left to right, beginning to end, nothing skipped. By the 3rd afternoon, the concrete floor was clear enough to walk without watching every step, and she could see the room as it had been designed, generous and functional, built by someone who knew exactly what work was going to happen in it. She found a tarp in the bed of her car and rigged it over the caved section of roof with bungee cords and 2 lengths of rope she'd tied to the overhead beams. It held. Not beautifully, but it held. The storm came on the 4th night. It wasn't a bad storm by Carolina standards. Wind, hard rain, an hour of serious noise. She sat in the front seat of her car with the windows fogged and listened to it move through. When it passed, she got out and walked to the boatyard with a flashlight. The tarp had survived. The eastern wall had not. It wasn't a full collapse. One section of the interior cladding had come away from the frame, a panel of old tongue-and-groove boards roughly 4 feet wide, pulling free at the top and hinging outward like a door that had been waiting for permission to open. Behind it, where she expected to see insulation or bare framing, was a narrow recess, a foot deep, 2 feet wide, running from floor to ceiling and sealed on 3 sides, with smooth boards that had been fitted too carefully to be structural. Miriam stood with her flashlight pointed at it for a long moment. Someone had built this into the wall deliberately. The boards at the back were a different wood than the exterior cladding, tighter grain, sanded, sealed at the edges, with something that had darkened over decades but hadn't cracked. The whole thing had been designed to look like nothing. From the outside, before the wall came down, it would have looked exactly like the rest. She reached in. Her fingers found a shelf she hadn't seen. Low, near the floor, and on it, a metal tin, roughly the size of a shoebox, soldered shut along the seam, with lead that had gone dull silver with age. Beside it, wrapped in a piece of oilcloth tied, with cord, something flat and rigid, and propped against the back of the recess, a small envelope, sealed with wax, the paper so yellowed it had gone the color of old cream. She read the handwriting on the front with her flashlight. For the one who comes back to finish it. The wind had dropped entirely. Outside, the creek made a low sound over stones. Miriam's knees were on the wet concrete, and she didn't notice. She lifted the tin carefully and set it in the crook of her arm. Then the wrapped parcel. Then the envelope, which she held by the edges the way you hold something you're not ready to open. She carried them to her car and sat in the driver's seat with the dome light on and the 3 items on the passenger seat beside her. She did not open them. Not that night. She sat with them for a long time, the way Vivian had sat, with things, with patience, as though the object deserved to be approached correctly, and rushing it would be a kind of discourtesy. Then she drove to the motel on Route 17 and got a room, and slept in a bed for the first time in 4 days. The Teal County Library was a 1-story brick building on Marsh Street, with a hand-lettered sign in the window that said Local History, Ask at Desk. Miriam went there the next morning before she did anything else. The woman at the desk was in her mid-70s, with white hair pinned back and reading glasses on a cord around her neck. She looked up when Miriam came in, assessed her in the way of someone who has worked a reference desk long enough to read people by what they're carrying. "You're the one who bought the Cole property," the woman said. "Word travels fast. Small county." She came around the desk and extended her hand. "Delphine Marsh. I was head librarian here for 31 years. I'm technically retired, but they can't figure out the filing system without me, so?" She said it without apology. "What do you need?" Miriam told her. The name, the Boatyard, whatever records the county kept from the 1950s and 60s, Port Authority minutes, business licenses, anything that touched Cole and Sons. Delphine looked at her for a moment, not unkindly. "Come in the back," she said. The storage room behind the main stacks smelled of old paper and cedar and the particular staleness of a room that stayed closed except when someone needed it. Metal shelving ran floor to ceiling on 3 walls. Filing cabinets, 4 of them, stood along the 4th wall, each one labeled in Delphine's precise handwriting. County records 1940 to 1955. County records 1956 to 1970. Municipal. Marine. Delphine went straight to the one marked Marine without hesitating. The Port Authority ran independently from the town council until 1971, she said, pulling the drawer and thumbing through folders with practiced speed. After that, it was absorbed. A lot of the pre-71 records were supposed to be transferred to the state archive, but most of them never made it. "I kept copies," she said, that last sentence flatly, as if keeping copies of records that should have been transferred was simply a thing a competent person did. She pulled a folder and opened it on the work table. Miriam stood beside her and read. The minutes were typed on paper that had gone soft at the folds. Most of it was procedural, docking fees, maintenance schedules, permit renewals. Then, in the minutes, from a meeting dated March 14, 1961. Motion to review operating license of Cole and Sons Boatworks. Holder Vivian A. Cole, licensed boatwright. Motion sponsored by H.R. Pace, Senior, Committee Chair. Grounds: safety violations, uninspected hull modifications, failure to comply with posted standards. Miriam read the name twice. "Pace," she said. Delphine turned a page without speaking. The next entry was from April. The license review had concluded. Vivian A. Cole's operating license as a certified boatwright had been suspended pending reinspection. The reinspection was scheduled, rescheduled, and then, in a line so brief it occupied barely 2 inches of the typed page, noted as completed, violations confirmed, license revoked, effective June 1, 1961. No detail about what violations. No inspector's name, just the conclusion and the date. "The Pace family has run the County Marina Committee since Harlan's grandfather," Delphine said quietly. "Different name on the door every generation. Same chair." Miriam looked at the folder. Was there ever a reinspection report? If there was, it didn't make it into this file. Delphine paused. "Or any other file I've ever found." She went back to the cabinet and pulled a second folder. This one held business registration records, the county's log of licensed trades, updated annually. She opened it to a page tabbed with a strip of masking tape and a date written in pencil, 1955 to 1963. She pointed to a line without touching it. Cole and Sons Boatworks. Proprietor, Vivian A. Cole. Licensed boatwright, Teal County, Cert. 1953, 3 vessels completed for U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, 1954 to 1958. Below it, in different ink, added later, License revoked June 1961. Business registration lapsed. Miriam stood very still. 3 vessels for the Coast Guard. She had built boats that went into service. She had a certification. And then 1 committee meeting, 1 motion, 1 inspector whose report had disappeared, and the whole thing was erased. Not dramatically, not loudly, just administratively, the way institutions erase things when they want them gone, without appearing to try. Did anyone question it? Miriam asked. Delphine looked at her, with the steady expression of a woman who had spent 31 years watching what the county chose to remember and what it chose to misplace. Not on record, she said. She poured 2 cups of tea from a thermos she'd brought from home and set one in front of Miriam. She didn't ask if Miriam wanted it. She just set it there, the way you offer things to someone who needs them before they know they do. They sat with the folders spread between them while the morning light came through the small high window and lay across the old paper in long, pale rectangles. Miriam held the tea with both hands and did not speak for a while. On the drive back to Teal Creek Road, she kept thinking about the line. License revoked. Business registration lapsed. As if the work had simply stopped on its own. As if Vivian had just decided to stop building things and gone quietly away. As if there had been no meeting, no motion, no man with a committee pin who decided the water in front of someone else's boatyard was better used for something else. The tin and the oilcloth parcel and the envelope were waiting in her motel room. She drove a little faster than she needed to. She opened the oilcloth parcel first. Inside, folded carefully and wrapped in wax paper against the damp, were 3 sheets of technical drawings, hand-drafted in pencil, so precise and consistent it was closer to printing than drawing. The lines showed the framing plan for a small workboat, 22 feet, flat-bottomed, with detailed cross-sections at the stem and stern and a series of notations along the margins in a small, upright hand, for inch white oak keel. Sister frames at 12-inch spacing. Caulk seams with oakum before paying. Beside each notation, a small check mark, as if the drawing had been used and the steps confirmed. At the bottom of each sheet, in the same hand, V.A. Cole, 1957. Miriam set the drawings on the bed and looked at them for a moment. She knew nothing about boat design, but she had spent 19 years teaching children to read, and she knew what mastery looked like when it was written down, the compression of someone who understood their subject so completely they didn't need to explain it, only record it. She opened the tin next. The lead solder along the seam gave way, with a table knife, reluctantly, the way a seal gives way when it's been doing its job for a long time. Inside, packed in a cloth that had faded from whatever color it had been to a uniform pale brown, were 2 items. The first was a small card, roughly the size of a business card, but heavier. Cardstock, official. It read, Teal County Marine Trades Board. Certificate of Qualification, Vivian A. Cole. Marine Carpentry and Hull Construction. Issued 1953. Across the face of it, someone had stamped 2 words in red ink that had bled slightly into the paper with age, license revoked. She had kept it. Vivian had taken the revoked certificate and sealed it in a tin and hidden it in a wall rather than throw it away. Miriam didn't know why, and then she did. Not all at once, but in the way that certain things clarify when you've been carrying them without knowing, because throwing it away would have meant agreeing with the verdict. And Vivian had never agreed with the verdict. She'd just gone quiet about it. The second item was a folded piece of notepaper, the kind sold in drugstores, lined and plain. The writing was in pencil. 3 sentences. I built 3 boats for the Coast Guard. They took my name off the records. Don't let them take yours. Miriam sat on the edge of the motel bed and held the note and did not move for a long time. Outside, a truck passed on Route 17. The motel heater ticked. The ceiling light was the yellow-white of cheap fluorescence, and it made the note look older than it was, or maybe just more tired. Vivian had ironed other people's laundry for the last 23 years of her life. She'd taken in alterations, hemmed curtains, worked her way through other people's domestic overflow with the same quiet efficiency she apparently brought to everything. She had never, in Miriam's memory, mentioned a boatyard. She had never mentioned Teal County. She had never said the words marine carpenter, or hull, or Coast Guard, or certificate, or anything. that would have told a 7-year-old girl, or a 12-year-old girl, or a 19-year-old woman standing at a graveside that she had once been someone the county needed to erase. She had kept a broken compass in a dish by the window. She had never explained it. Some things you carry, she had said, even when they can't tell you where you're going. Miriam set the note down on the bed beside the revoked certificate and the drawings. Then she picked up the envelope. The wax seal had gone brittle and came away cleanly. Inside was a single folded sheet. To whoever finds this, if I am not the one to come back, then you came instead, and that is enough. The work I did here was good work. The record they made of me was not honest. I am not asking you to fix it. I am asking you to know it happened. The Boatyard is yours to do what you will with. I only ask one thing. If you build here, build honestly. That is all it ever was. VC. No date. Miriam folded the letter and held it against her sternum and sat in the yellow light while the heater ticked and the trucks went by outside. She had driven 6 hours because a website listed a property with her name on the sign. She had told herself it was a coincidence. She had told herself that for 4 days now, and she had not quite believed it for 4 days, and she did not believe it now. She reached into her coat pocket and took out the compass. The needle sat at its usual angle, slightly west, pointing at nothing or pointing at something it had always known and never said. She set it on the nightstand and turned off the light. Harlan Pace's office was on the 2nd floor of the county marina building, a glass and aluminum structure that sat at the end of the main pier like it had been designed to announce itself. The lower floor held the harbormaster's station and a small nautical supply shop. The upper floor was committee space, conference room, 2 private offices, windows on 3 sides that looked out over the water. His assistant showed Miriam in without asking her to wait. Harlan was standing at the window with his back to the door when she entered, looking out at the marina. The water was flat and gray in the November light, and the moored boats moved in small, identical arcs. He turned when he heard her and gestured to the chair across from his desk with the ease of someone who arranged the furniture of conversations as a matter of habit. "Glad you came in," he said. He sat and folded his hands on the desk. Behind him, pinned to a corkboard, was a large format map of the Teal Creek waterfront. The boatyard at the end of Teal Creek Road was marked with a red border and a label in small type, Phase 3, Marina Expansion. "I want to be straightforward with you," he said. "That property has been in the county surplus listing for 3 years. The development committee has had a long-term plan for that corridor since 2020. The fact that it went to public auction instead of being held for commercial development was an administrative error, one we're in the process of correcting." Miriam looked at the map. The auction was legal. The county clerk confirmed it. "The sale was processed correctly," he said. "That's different from the listing being appropriate. There are procedures for commercial zone parcels. They weren't followed." He said it the way someone says something they've said before in rooms where no one pushed back. "I've spoken with county council. We have a basis for a formal review." "On what grounds?" "The zoning overlay." He opened a folder on his desk and turned it to face her. It was a planning document, dense, formatted, professionally printed. "That parcel has carried a commercial marine designation since 2019. Surplus auction is not the correct disposal mechanism for designated commercial land. The assessor's office acted outside its authority." Miriam looked at the document without picking it up. "We'd like to make this easy for everyone," Harlan said. "I'm authorized to offer you $18,000 for the property. That's 90 times what you paid. You'd walk away clean, no legal process, no delays." He paused. "You're not from here. I understand the story of the sign and the name, I do. But this part of the county has plans already in motion. You'd be fighting a process that's been running for 4 years, with a property you've owned for less than 2 weeks." Miriam reached into the bag she'd brought and set the copy of the 1961 Port Authority minutes on his desk. She set it next to his planning document. He looked at it without picking it up. "Vivian Cole's license was revoked by this committee," Miriam said. "By your grandfather. The inspection report that justified it doesn't appear in any county file. The violations cited were never detailed in the record." Harlan was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice had not changed in temperature. "That was 60 years ago," he said. "And I'm not sure what it has to do with the current zoning review." I'm not sure yet either, Miriam said. But I find it interesting that the same committee that removed Vivian Cole's license in 1961 is now the committee trying to acquire her property in 2024. Something moved behind his eyes, not guilt and not anger exactly, more like the expression of a man recalculating the distance between where he thought he was and where he actually was. He picked up the planning document and closed the folder. I'd encourage you to think carefully, he said. These processes can be prolonged. They can be expensive, and properties in legal review lose value. He stood, which was the end of the meeting. The offer stands for 30 days. Miriam picked up the Port Authority minutes and put them back in her bag. At the door, she paused. Vivian Cole built 3 boats for the Coast Guard, she said. Her name wasn't in the record on any of them. I checked. She hadn't checked yet. She said it anyway, because she was certain it was true. I'll let you know about the offer. She walked down the pier, with the wind off the water against her face and her hands in her pockets, the compass on the left side, Harlan's card on the right. The marina stretched out in both directions, clean, maintained, well-funded. A long way from what it had been when a woman, with a certification and a pencil and a yard full of white oak frames had built boats in a shed at the end of a dirt road. She did not go back to the motel. She drove to Teal Creek Road and parked in front of the Boatyard and sat for a while. The sign above the door said Cole and Sons in letters that had been painted over and come back through anyway. Delphine called on a Thursday morning, early enough that the light through the motel window was still pale. Miriam had been awake. She'd been awake for an hour, sitting in the chair by the window, with the compass in her hand, turning it over in the way she'd had since she was a child. Not looking at it exactly, just holding it, the way you hold something when you're trying to think clearly. I found something, Delphine said. Can you come in this morning? She didn't say what she'd found. Miriam didn't ask. She was in the car in 10 minutes. Delphine was waiting in the back room, with a folder on the work table and a second cup of tea already poured. She didn't speak immediately when Miriam came in. She opened the folder and turned it so Miriam could read it. The document was a photostat, a copy of a copy, slightly blurred at the edges but legible. It was a county guardian registration form, the kind used before the state consolidated its child welfare records in the 1980s. Teal County had kept its own forms through 1975. The form was dated November 3, 1973. Child, female, approximately 7 months. Found at Cole and Sons Boat Works, Teal Creek Road, November 1, 1973. Registered guardian of record, Vivian A. Cole. In the notes field, in Vivian's upright, careful handwriting, this child was left at the Boatyard. I am keeping her. The guardian address listed was not Teal Creek Road. It was an apartment in Beaufort, a city 2 counties north. The child's name, filled in a different hand, possibly a registrar's, Miriam. No last name in the original entry. Below it, in a notation dated 6 months later, surname registered, Cole. Miriam read the form 3 times. She was standing very still, and she knew she was standing very still, and she couldn't do anything about it. She had been born somewhere. She had always known she had been born somewhere, in the way that everyone knows this, without knowing more. The foster system had told her nothing useful. By the time she was old enough to ask, the earliest records were incomplete, or sealed, or simply gone. Vivian had never discussed it. When Miriam was 12 and asked directly, Vivian had said, "You were 7 months old. That's when I got you. That's all there is." And Miriam had understood, from Vivian's tone, that the question had been answered as completely as it was going to be. She had believed she had no beginning that she could find. But she had been left at a boatyard on Teal Creek Road on a November morning in 1973. And Vivian Cole, who had just lost her license 2 years earlier, who was living on alterations work and ironing by then, who had moved north to Beaufort and taken a 7-month-old child who wasn't hers and registered herself as guardian without ceremony or explanation, Vivian had named her after herself in the only way available. She had given Miriam her last name. She had given her the compass, eventually, without explaining where it came from. She had given her the sentence, "Some things you carry, even when they can't tell you where you're going." Miriam set the form down on the table. Outside the small high window, a car passed on the street. Somewhere in the building, a copy machine ran a job. The ordinary sounds of a Thursday morning in a small county library. She thought about driving here 2 weeks ago not knowing why. She thought about the compass needle pulling, briefly, toward the interior of a building she had never entered, in a county she had never visited, toward a wall that a storm was about to open. She thought about Vivian keeping the revoked certificate instead of throwing it away. I am not asking you to fix it. I am asking you to know it happened. Is there anything on file, Miriam said, about where the child came from? Before Vivian. Delphine opened a second, thinner folder. I went back further, she said. There's a birth record in the county hospital log for November 1973. Mother listed as unknown. Father listed as unknown. One note from the admitting staff. She pointed to the line. Infant brought in by a woman giving the name V. Cole. Boatyard. Vivian had brought her in. Vivian had been there at the beginning. Miriam picked up her tea, which had gone cold, and drank it anyway. Harlan Pace is trying to take the property, she said. I know. Delphine folded her hands on the table. I've been watching the Pace family work this county for 40 years. She said it, without bitterness. The way you state something, that is simply the weather. What do you need? The inspection report that justified the license revocation. The one that isn't in the file. I've been looking since you left last time. Delphine pulled a third folder, thin. It was submitted to the State Marine Board in 1961. The state received it, but the original was never returned to county. I called the state archive yesterday. She paused. The report lists the inspector as R.T. Pace, Harold Pace Sr.'s brother. The committee chair's brother had conducted the inspection of the committee chair's target. Is that in writing? Miriam said. The state archive can provide a certified copy, Delphine said. I've already requested it. It'll take 10 days. She looked at Miriam steadily. The sale of that property was legal. The original license revocation was procedurally corrupt. If Harlan files a zoning challenge, he's going to be doing it against a record that now includes his grandfather's conflict of interest. She stood and refiled the folders in their cabinet, each one in its correct place. Vivian Cole was the best Boatyard this county ever had, she said. And I know that because I spent 31 years reading every record this county kept. She closed the cabinet drawer. Nobody wrote it down anywhere that mattered. That always bothered me. Miriam drove back to Teal Creek Road slowly, through the flat coastal landscape, the cord grass along the ditches gone pale gold in the November light, the water visible in cuts between the marsh. She pulled up in front of the boatyard and turned off the engine and sat. She called Harlan's office from the car. His assistant answered. Please tell Mr. Pace that I've reviewed his offer, she said. The answer is no. She hung up before the assistant responded. Inside, the boatyard was quiet. The tarp over the broken roof section had held through the week's weather. The two standing hull cradles cast long shadows in the afternoon light. The workbench along the south wall waited, with its iron clamps still bolted at regular intervals, still ready. She put the compass in the center of the workbench and stood back and looked at it. Then she went to her car and brought in her tools. If this story is sitting with you, Vivian's 3 sentences, the certificate she kept, the name she gave, stay with it a little longer. Subscribe so you're there for the next one. And if you know someone who's carried something, without being able to explain why, maybe send it to them. 6 months is not a long time to build something. It is long enough to know whether you are going to. By April, the boatyard roof was patched and sealed, the cracked floor routed, the walls reskined, with new boards cut to match the original profile, as closely as Miriam could manage. The hull cradles had been repaired and leveled. The workbench had been stripped and resurfaced, the iron clamps cleaned of rust and reset, the wood beneath them refinished with linseed oil, until it came back to something close to what it had been when it was new. The county zoning challenge had died in committee in February, 3 days after the state archive delivered the certified copy of the 1961 inspection report to Delphine, who had forwarded it to county council, who had apparently made a phone call to Harlan's office that Miriam was not present for and did not need to be. The development map on Harlan's wall had been revised. The red border around the boatyard on Teal Creek Road was gone. No one called to tell her. She found out because the county assessor's office updated the parcel record, and she checked it online one morning while the coffee finished making. She had not spoken to Harlan Pace since the phone call in November. She did not expect to. On a Saturday in the second week of April, Miriam laid the last section of new flooring. She had sourced white oak, the same species Vivian's drawings had specified for hull framing, which seemed right in a way she didn't try to articulate, and cut it herself over several weekends, working from a table saw she'd bought used from a man in Morehead City who was retiring. Tom at the hardware store in town had shown her how to set the blade correctly. He hadn't made a production of it. He'd shown her twice, and then left her alone, which was what she needed. The oak ran in long planks from the door to the back wall, with the grain oriented the way you'd run a hull, fore to aft, the long way, so the light from the south windows traveled with it in the afternoon. The last plank was short, a fill piece near the back wall, cut to close the run. She set it in place, tapped it flush with a rubber mallet, and knelt with the nail gun. Delphine arrived somewhere in the middle of that last plank and sat on an upturned wooden crate near the door without being asked to. She had brought nothing and said nothing when she sat down. She just watched the way she watched things, with attention and without interference. Miriam drove the last nail. The sound of it settled into the building, and then the building went quiet. She stood and looked at the floor. The oak was pale gold in the afternoon light, the grain moving in long lines toward the back wall, where the recess had been, patched now, filled and sanded, indistinguishable from the rest of the wall, if you didn't know to look for it. She reached into her coat pocket. The compass was there where it always was. She took it out and stood with it in her palm for a moment, the needle at its usual angle, slightly west, the same as always, pointing at whatever it had always pointed at. She walked to the center of the new floor and crouched and set the compass down in the middle of the planks. It sat there in the afternoon light, brass going warm, needle still. She stood up and put her hands in her pockets and looked at it. It occurred to her that she had carried it for 33 years because Vivian had taught her to, without explaining why, and that she had never questioned that, and that there was something in not questioning it. That was its own kind of answer. Delphine said nothing for a while. Then, "What are you going to do with the space?" "Classes," Miriam said. "Marine carpentry, basic boat repair. Maybe frame construction." She paused. "There's no place in this county to learn any of that anymore." "There used to be," Delphine said. "I know." Outside, the cord grass along the creek had come back green after the winter, and the water caught the late afternoon light and threw it in long, slow pieces across the wall. Somewhere on the water, a boat engine ran and faded. The boatyard was not finished. There was trim work remaining, a second workbench to build, tool storage, a sign she hadn't decided on yet. The cradles needed their padding replaced before they'd hold a hull. There was a great deal more work. This was not the kind of thing that ended. Vivian Cole was not famous. She left no official record that acknowledged what she had built. 3 Coast Guard boats carried her joinery and her calculations and her notations in pencil along the margins, and none of them bore her name in any log that survived. The county had revoked her license on the word of a man whose name was the same as the man who had wanted her property, and the county had then set about forgetting it had done so. She had not forgotten. She had sealed the record in a tin and hidden it in a wall and written 3 sentences on a piece of drugstore notepaper. "I built 3 boats for the Coast Guard. They took my name off the records. Don't let them take yours." Miriam was not a boatwright. She had been a reading teacher. She had spent 19 years teaching children to find the meaning inside a sentence, to trust that words had been put there deliberately, and that the work of understanding them was worth the time. She had been let go from that work by people who believed it was dispensable. She was 52 years old, and she was standing in a building that had been built by a woman who had carried her out of a cold November morning and given her a name and a compass and a sentence she'd been turning over her whole life without knowing what had opened. She understood now. Not everything. She would never know everything. Not who left her at the door, not what Vivian had known about, where she came from, not all of what those 3 sentences were meant to say. Some things stay sealed. Some questions don't get their answers back. But she knew this. Vivian had come back to this place after they took her license, and she had kept working, and she had hidden the evidence that she had existed here, and she had trusted that whoever came next would find it and know what to do with it. Miriam had found it. The compass sat on the floor in the afternoon light, needle at its old angle. She did not pick it up. For the first time in 33 years, she left it where it was and walked out into the April air, and the building stood behind her, solid, quiet, waiting for the work that was still to come.